evening to each of you. Let me begin this presentation by defining what is ethics. The term ethics refers to a set of moral ideals. Ethics was derived from the Greek word ethos, which means customs, characters, traditions, habits, and so on. It is often known as moral philosophy and is concerned with what is beneficial for individuals and society. It has the ability to deal with what is good and bad in terms of moral duty and obligation. Ethics is a set of moral standards established by a society or a group and has an impact on how people make choices and deal with it. Here are some of the dilemmas in ethics. First, what it takes to live a happy life. Second, our responsibility and rights. Third, the language of right and wrong. And fourth, what is good and bad in moral decisions. Religions, philosophies, and cultures have all influenced our understanding of ethics. They inject passion into discussions about certain issues such as abortion, human rights, and professional ethics. Ethics is about the other. It is concerned with the interests of others, society's interests, God's interests, ultimate goods, and so forth. When someone thinks ethically, they are thinking about something bigger than themselves. They cared about others too. Ethics can be the source of a group's strength. One issue with ethics is that it is frequently used as a weapon. If a majority thinks that a certain behavior is bad, it can use morality to justify assaulting people who engage in that activity. When people do this, they frequently perceive others they consider to be immoral as being less human or deserving of respect than themselves, which can have devastating consequences. Ethics requires good people as well as good actions. It is not only about the morality of specific courses of action, but at the same time, it's about the integrity of people in living a decent life. It is about the ethical person of individuals. Ethics is simply a set of rules that everyone in society agrees on, wherein it is fine if they all agree to do it, and if not, that is a problem. Now, let us hear more information from teacher Alison Federico.
That guide a person's behavior or how an activity is carried out. Morality defines what is right and wrong about human actions and thoughts, and what is good and bad about who we are. To understand morality, we must understand what it means to be good. Ethics refers to well-founded moral norms that dictate what humans should do, usually in terms of rights, obligations, societal advantages, justice, or special qualities. For example, ethical standards relate to the norms that impose reasonable obligations to refrain from rape, theft, murder, assault, slander, and fraud. Honesty, compassion, and loyalty are among the virtues enjoyed by ethical norms. Furthermore, ethical norms cover rights such as the right to life, the right to be from harm, and the right to privacy. In short, ethics is imposed and morality is personal.
Good day, everyone. My name is Irene May Baracchio, and I'm here today to talk to you about the definition of ethics. What is ethics? Ethics comes from the Greek word ethos, which means character or moral. Ethics is based on a well-founded standards of right and wrong that prescribes what humans ought to do, usually in terms of rights, obligations, benefits to society, or specific virtues. Ethics refers to the branch of philosophy that studies the morality of human acts. In philosophy, ethics is very important because most philosophers of their particular focus have at least something to say about ethics, and that something is often a very big clue as to what that philosopher is all about. Ethical philosophy is often among the most practical philosophical investigations. Ethics is where terms such as right and wrong or good and evil get their meaning. Further, ethics can be involved in politics when it looks at the right and wrong in context of society. Ethics can be distinguished between the good and evil, moral or immoral, in every decision we make. That's all. Thank you.
Your ideas about what is ethics, and now let me share my definition and the 3 levels of it. Ethics: the process of examining, identifying, and defending our beliefs, principles, and purpose is known as ethics. It is about discovering who we are and remaining faithful to our identity in the face of temptations, obstacles, and uncertainty. It's not always enjoyable and it's never simple, but if we commit to it, we set ourselves up to make decisions we can be proud of, creating a life that's genuinely ours and a future we want to be part of. Ethics comes from the word ethos, which originally means custom or character. It is a branch of philosophy that studies the rightness and wrongness of a human action. Our ability to choose how we will act is one of the characteristics that distinguishes humans. Every time we make a decision, it is feasible that we may have made a different one. Soren Kierkegaard, a Danish philosopher, expresses this feeling when he describes standing on the edge of a precipice. The only thing keeping us from plunging into the emptiness is our decision to do otherwise. Ethics is only conceivable because we have the ability to act against our nature in accordance with our conscience. It permits us to make decisions about what should happen rather than merely thinking or explaining what is likely to happen. Which of the following is the best approach for you to act? Which of the possibilities should you make a reality? That's the questions ethics seeks to answer. Ethics isn't the only method to establish what the best decision is. Some may regard it as the one that best serves their own goals and interests or produces the most money. Others may concentrate on what is likely to be the most popular option. At the center of each of these is an origin of ethics, yet it is a diversion from the most important problem. The best option, according to ethics, is the one that best achieves what is good, right, and compatible with the nature of items in question. These are referred to as values, principles, and purpose at the ethics center. Values tells us what's good. They are the things that we strive for, desire, and seek to protect. Principles tells us what is right, outlining how we may or may not achieve our values. Purpose is your reason for being. It gives life to your values and principles. The types or levels of ethics. Number 1 is the normative ethics. It is prescriptive in nature, seeking to establish norms or standards that regulate right and wrong or good and bad behavior. This may include articulating the good habits that we should acquire as well as the duties that we should follow in order to follow the consequences of our behavior on others. As a result, the normative ethics is typically concerned with developing standards or ideas that teach us how we should behave.
Thank you so much, Ms. Agmata, for sharing your ideas regarding to the definition of ethics. Now, let's proceed. To each and every one of you, I wish you a wonderful day. I am Reina Lynn, and I'll be giving some glimpses as well as the definition of ethics. So now, what is ethics? Ethics is defined as a system that determines what is right and wrong. This system has built to ensure the well-being of individuals and society as a whole. A person possessing high ethical values is one who conforms with the ethical norms set by society without questioning them. Ethics deal with such questions at all levels. Its subject consists of the fundamental issues of practical decision-making, and its major concerns include the nature of ultimate value and the standards by which human actions can be judged for the right or wrong. Ethics can be defined as established standards of right and wrong that prescribe what people should do, usually in terms of human rights, responsibilities, advantages to social order, honesty, or specific core values. Ethical principles also include those which enjoin the values of authenticity, justice, and integrity. Ethics involves the demands of personal freedom, liberty, and the right to free will and privacy. These principles also requires a constant attempt to research our spiritual values and moral behavior and try to guarantee that we and the organizations we help from perform up to expectations that are fair and ethical. That is it. I hope you get something out of this. Everyone, have a nice day ahead. Thank you so much.
Good day, everyone. I'm Princess Heidi, your newscaster for today. Our news shows about the different definition about ethics. We are living at this kind of life that behavior has the most impact in socializing others. We believe that our behaviorism and moral is the best weapon we should have. In order to make it, ethics should be present in this. It is derived from the word ethos, which means way of living, and also it is the principle of individual, a foundation of fairness and values, even the justification of what is right and wrong. Again, I am Princess Heidi, your one of the newscaster for today.
I would like to express my sincerely gratitude to you, Miss Heidi, for adding information to us. Now, I am also here to deliver my information about the significance of ethics in our daily lives. As we all know, ethics is moral norms that regulates human behavior, which means that ethics has a significant role in our daily lives. I have my 3 points here that I want to elaborate to you. First, ethics help us in developing and shaping our human characteristic, traits, and attitudes. It encourages us to behave in a positive manner. It teaches us on how to get a good relationship with our surroundings and to live in harmony. For example, practicing ethical behaviors like following rules and respecting everyone can be an example or a good way to practice ethical behaviors. Second, in terms of decision making, ethics can make an ethical judgments and decisions while considering the others fully. Through the codes of ethics, we can make a wonderful decision. Lastly, ethics has a vital role in our society. It assisting us to achieving an economic growth and environment. It also assists us in a peaceful environment and avoiding unnecessary violence. Rising crimes, stealing, and conflicts can be avoided by practicing proper ethics. Remember, ethics can be real and practical in guiding us to our lives.
Thank you, Miss Blanche. Hello and good day to everyone. Allow me to share my part regarding the significance of ethics in our daily life. Knowing the ethics, I am guided in my decision making and my behavior. When I encounter many problems, at least I know how to deal with them and how to behave in a certain decision. Significance of ethics in our daily lives. Ethics serve as a guide to moral daily living and help us judge whether our behavior can be justified. Ethics refers society's sense of the right way of living our daily lives. It does this by establishing rules, principles, and values on which we can base our conduct. At its simplest, ethics is a system of moral principles. They affect how people make decisions and lead their lives. Ethics is concerned and with what is good for individuals and society, and is also described as moral philosophy. Thank you.
A pleasant day to all. We people always make mistakes.
We learn for our mistakes, right? This is the result of bad decisions or something else. But as we learn from it, we gain knowledge and experience. We don't do it again, then, but if we done it again, it's not a mistake anymore. We have to build our moral principle. We must do things according to it. We must make decisions according to our moral virtue and what is the essential things to do. Example, you are in a situation to help the one that hurted you. There is a thought in your mind that you feel pity for him and you want to help him. But still, you're thinking that he hurted you and you feel dissatisfied. Ethics is the one that builds your moral virtue and develop moral principles. It teaches you to make right decisions with the right to the moral daily living you want. Everybody wants a good living, right? So we must do good things to develop moral principles that we have to use in our daily lives. And it is ethics. Just think positive as always. Don't argue with yourself. To make right decision, just pray and trust yourself. And that's all.
Hello there, folks. Have you made your decisions now? Decisions from what you eat, where you wanna go, or is there anything bothers you? Have you made your last decisions worth it, or is it a yes or a no? We all know that all the people make decisions by themselves, but they think of the consequences, so they're not doing it. Yes, we want the right path as always, so we ought to do good in every aspects. We have ethics in our daily lives to help us to do good. From the right thing to do, the positive decisions, and the decisions we made that help us build our beauties. Imagine this scenario. You are in a hurry and you saw an elder woman or elder man struggling to cross the street. So there is a thought in your mind that you want to help him, help her, or is no, because you're in a hurry, so you might get late. So the decisions you will make will reflect the moral you have. That is ethics. You are ought to do the right things and the positive decisions to build your moral virtues and feed your soul a good deeds. The ideal virtues of us reflects how we act in certain situations. So we have to make right decisions to make good virtue and good moral to everyone. All in all, we have to do good things and be helpful to each other, so we build moral virtues and feed our soul good deeds. So we will build our moral virtues and give positive reviews or get positive reviews of ourselves. So that's all, folks, and hope you will enjoy our video and these speakings, and good luck.
Hello and a glorious day to everyone. Ethics determine whether a person is good or bad. Being ethical means you have a good conscience, a good knowledge to determine what's right and wrong. Ethics is just not all about teaching only one person. It's for all the people living in our society. Without ethics, there will be a chaos, a selfish world, a craziness, and a cruel world of hatred. Ethics can be defined as a set of moral principles that determine what is good for people and society as a whole. Ethics in its most basic form is a set of well-known moral principles. They will have an impact on individuals make decisions and how their lives are affected. It is also concerned with how beneficial it is to individuals and society. It explains the history of ethics and how ethical decisions are made, as well as the necessity of ethics in the workplace. Ethics refers to what is right and how to make decisions in a timely manner. Ethics should always be in the center of everything we do. That's why ethics are extremely important to our society and make our society livable and peaceful.
Thank you, Ms. Cantojas. Now, what is the significance of it in our daily life? The significance of it in our daily life is it helps us to decide or make decisions that we really need in every aspect. So here are some of the significance of ethics in daily life. First, ethics teaches us what we ought to do, not what we do. We ought to treat others with kindness, compassion, respect, and so on. In other words, an ethical person practices applying virtues or character traits in making everyday decisions. Next, ethics is what guides us to tell the truth, keep our promises, or help someone in need. There are a framework of ethics underlying our lives on a daily basis, helping us make decisions that create positive impacts and steering away unjust outcomes. And next, ethics asks us to consider whether our actions are right or wrong. It also asks us how those character traits that help humans flourish, such as integrity, honesty, faithfulness, and compassion, play out in everyday living. The next one is, ethics serves us as a guide to moral daily living and helps us judge whether our behavior can be justified. Ethics refers to society's sense of the right way of living our daily lives. It does this by establishing rules, principles, and values on which we can base. Now, we move on to the distinction between moral and non-moral standards.
Thank you, Ms. Berlasa, for giving us some information. Now, I am here to deliver my information about moral standards. What is moral standards? Moral comes from the Latin word mors, for habits. It supposed us to teach on how to be a better person. If moral used as an adjective, it means good or ethical. Moral standards are those concerned with relating to human behavior, especially the distinctions between good and bad behavior. It refers to the norms which we have about the types of actions which we believe to be morally acceptable and morally unacceptable. Specifically, moral standards deals with matters which can either seriously harm or seriously benefit human beings. Moral standards are important for society and individuals because they help people learn how to get along and live well with each other. They teach us that all human beings deserve the same rights, which is why it's not okay to discriminate against someone based on their ethnicity or race. People who follow moral principles or standards also tends to have a better quality of life than those who don't. Moral standards can also impact an individual's identity and sense of self-worth. There are 5 examples of moral standards. 1. Speak to people in a moderate tone of voice, appropriate to where they are, respecting the standards of the good speaker, and allowing others to intervene in the conversation. Number 2. Treat all people in a cordial way, without violence or mistreatment, even if they are enemies of your friends. Number 3. Keep secrets, confessions made by other people, and not divulge the privacy of others. Number 4. Be helpful and attentive to neighbors and provide help when necessarily, without seeking extra behavior or suggesting gifts. Number 5. Fulfill the word that has been given in the form of commitment, so that it always has credibility and respect. So when you need something, believe in your promise. That's all. Thank you.
So thank you, and we really appreciate you for your efforts and dedication to deliver all the important informations to us. So now, let's proceed to my part, which is to discuss and to add more information regarding to the distinction between moral and non-moral standards. In moral standards, it is referred to the standards that a person or a group has about what is right or wrong, or good or evil. Accordingly, moral standards are those concerned with or relating to human behavior, especially the distinction between good and bad or right or wrong behavior. Morality is an innate sense, instinctively practiced of what is in the best interest of individuals, nations, and the planet. It seeks to
perpetuate freedom, happiness, and innocence. Like moral standards involve the rules people have about the kinds of action they believe are morally right and wrong, as well as the values they place on the kinds of objects they believe are morally good and morally bad. Some ethicists equate moral standards with moral values and moral principles. Non-moral standard refers to rules that are unrelated to moral or ethical consideration. Either these standards are not necessarily linked to morally or by nature lack ethical sense. Basic example of non-moral standard include rules of etiquette, fashion standards, rules in games, and various houses. Technically, religious rules, some traditions, and legal statutes, exemplar laws, and ordinances are non-moral principles, though they are ethically relevant depending on some factors and context. The following 6 characteristics of moral standards further differentiate them from non-moral standards. Letter A. Let's go to letter A. Moral standards involve serious wrongs or significant benefits. Moral standards deal with matters which can seriously impact, that is, injure or benefit human beings. It is not the case with many non-moral standards. For instance, the following or violating some basketball rules may matter in basketball games but does not necessarily affect one's life or well-being. Letter B. Moral standards ought to be preferred to other values. Moral standards have overriding character or hegemonic authority. If a moral standard states that a person has a moral obligation to do something, then he or she is supposed to do that even if conflicts with other non-moral standards and even self-interest. Moral standards are not the only rules or principles in society, but they take precedence over other considerations, including aesthetics, prudentials, and even legal ones. A person may be aesthetically justified in leaving behind his family in order to devote his life to faith, but morally, all things considered, he or she probably was not justified. It may be prudent to lie to save someone's dignity, but it's probably morally wrong to do so. When a particular law becomes a serious immoral, it may be people's moral duty to exercise civil disobedience. There is a general moral duty to obey the law, but there may come a time when the injustice of an evil law is unbearable and thus calls for illegal but moral non-cooperation, such as unfavoring laws call for citizens to return slaves to their owners. C. Moral standards are not established by authority figures. Moral standards are not invented, formed, or generated by authoritative bodies or persons such as nations, legislative bodies. Ideally, instead, these values ought to be considered in the process of making laws. In principle, therefore, moral standards cannot be changed nor notified by the decisions of a particular authoritative body. One thing about these standards, nonetheless, is that its validity lies in the soundness or adequacy of the reason that are considered to support and justify them. D. Moral standards have the trait of universality, stability. But simply put, it means that everyone should live up to moral standards. To be more accurate, however, it entails that the moral principle must apply to all who are in relevantly similar situation. If one judges that Act A is morally right for a certain person B, then it is morally right for anybody relevant similar to B. This characteristic is exemplified in Golden Rule. Do unto others what you would them do unto you. If you were in their shoes, and in the formal principle of justice, it cannot be right for A to treat B in a manner in which would be wrong for B to treat A, merely on the ground that they are two different individuals and without there any difference between the natures or circumstances of the two, which can be stated as a reasonable ground for difference of treatment. Universality is an extension of the principle of consistency. That is, one ought to be consistent about one's value judgments. Moral E. Moral standards are based on impartial consideration. Moral standard does not evaluate standards on the basis of interest of a certain person or group, but one that goes beyond personal interest to a universal standpoint in which each person's interests are impartially counted as equal. Impartiality is usually depicted as being free of bias or prejudice. Impartiality in morality requires that we give equal or adequate consideration to the interests of the concerning parties. F. Moral standards are associated with special emotions and vocabulary. Prescriptivity indicates that the practical or action-guiding nature of moral standard. These moral standards are generally put forth as injunction or imperatives such as do not kill, do not unnecessarily harm, and love your neighbor. These principles are proposed for use to advise and to influence the action. Retroactively, this feature is used to evaluate behavior, to assign praise and blame, and to produce feelings of satisfaction or of guilt.
Thank you for that wonderful information, Mr. Cholo. Now, let's proceed to my part. So, why do we need to differentiate moral standard and non-moral standard? It is important to note that different societies have different moral beliefs and that our beliefs are heavily influenced by our own culture and context. As a result, some values have moral implications, while others do not. Consider the wearing of a hijab. Without a doubt, among traditional Muslim societies, the wearing of a hijab is the most suitable act that women must perform in terms of dressing. In reality, displaying aspects of a woman's body, like her face and legs, is frowned upon by certain Muslims. However, in many areas of the globe, particularly in Western nations, most people don't object if women barely cover their bodies. In reality, In terms of beauty, women are attractive if they have a small figure as well as wearing excessively risky clothing. The argument here is that people in the West may have fitted Muslims, women who wear a hijab, while some Muslims may view women who dress up daringly as a repulsive. Again, this demonstrates that various civilizations have distinct moral standards. What is the subject of moral indifference? That is a matter of taste or non-moral work. In one culture may be a matter of moral significance in another. Of course, after we've identified moral standards from non-moral ones, we will be able to determine core ethical ideals that can guide our behavior using the principle and theories of ethics. Indeed, if we recognize that some values and ideas are immoral, we will be able to avoid falling into the trap of cultural reductionism and the unnecessary impositions of one cultural norm on others.
Thank you, Mr. Dake and Ms. Kapili, for that information. I'm here to discuss the definition of moral standards and also its examples. Moral standards are those that deal with or relate to human behavior, particularly right and wrong distinction. Moral standards are guidelines that people follow when it comes to what they believe to be ethically proper and immoral behavior. These are the example of moral standards. Always tell the truth, do not destroy property, have courage, keep your promises, do not cheat, treat others as you want to be treated, and do not judge. According to Francis Schaeffer, if there is no absolute moral standard, then one cannot say in a final sense that anything is right or wrong.
Oh, what a good definition, Teacher Joshua Sigilla. And thank you for introducing me as what Teacher Joshua said and Teacher Noela Castillo. And I will tackle about the distinction between moral standards. First and foremost, what is morality? What in your perspective is moral? According to research, morality encompasses a man's entire life, his thoughts and motives as well as his action, which is correct. However, because all of us has our own definition of morality, morality for me is a good action that people take not only for their own good, but also for the good of a small number of people. Because ethics is defined as the area of the study that deals with moral principle. It just focuses on one's values. Since we're on the topic, I'll quickly state that ethics and moral constantly cling together, as if like they were associated. Moral standard refers to what people believes about what action are morally right and wrong, as well as the values they place on what objects are morally good and morally bad. While ethicist equates moral standard with moral values and moral principle, there are certainly some common moral that most people agreed on, such as always tell the truth, which is you should do not destroy property, have courage, keep your promises, and the most important thing, last but not least, that most students should do and I should do too, do not cheat. Now for the rest of the talk, I'll quickly present Teacher Juliana Sigilla.
Thank you, Ms. Castillo. So, moral standards. Moral standards force others to act accordingly. All the decisions we make, all the intentions we have and all the actions we do in our life is willing to accord to some moral standards. It helps us to recognize what is right or good and what is wrong or bad, so we act accordingly to some moral code we have. According to some scholars, moral standards are the sum of combined norms and values. In other words, norms plus values equal moral standards. On the one hand, norms are understood as general rules about our actions or behavior. For example, we may say, we are always under the obligations to fulfill our promises, or killing innocent people is absolutely wrong. On the other hand, values are understood as enduring belief or statements about what is good or desirable or not. For example, we may say helping poor people is good, or cheating during the exam is bad. So, overall, moral standards promote the good, that is welfare and well-being of human, as well as animals and environment.
Thank you, Teacher Juliana Sikinya. Now let's discuss the characteristics of moral standards. First, moral standards involve serious rules or significant benefits. Moral standards deal with matters we think can seriously injure or benefit humans, animals, and the environment, just like child abuse, rape, and murder. Second, moral standards ought to be prepared to other values. Moral standards have overriding character or hegemonic authority. If a moral standard states that a person has the moral obligation to do something, then he or she is supposed to do that, even if it conflicts with other non-moral standards. Third, moral standards are not established by authority figures. Moral standards are not invented, formed, or generated by authoritative bodies or persons, such as nations' legislative bodies. Ideally, instead, these values ought to be considered in the process of making laws. Fourth, moral standards have the trait of universalizability. One of Kant's categorical imperatives is the universalizability principle, in which one should act only in accordance with that maximum, through moral standards you can associated with special emotions and vocabulary. Moral standards does not evaluate standards on the basis of the interest of a certain person or group, but one that goes beyond personal interest to a universal standpoint in which each person's interests are impartially counted as equal.
Thank you, classmates. Now let's proceed to my part. Moral standards, a self-imposed code of conduct, is referring to thoughts, deeds, speeches, which are inherently benevolent in nature. These acts can benefit but never hurt the others concerned with the principles of right and wrong behavior, whether the outcomes affect people or other sentient beings, positively or negatively. It's hard to set universal moral standards as each culture and religion because it concerned a different set of moral codes of conduct. It can be taught through decent family teaching and formal school education by instilling good and reasonable moral standards into one's mind.
We stated that morality makes people better because their actions are aimed at goodness, kindness, and changing the world for a better and assisting people. So now, let's talk about non-moral standards. So here's Teacher Dipad to give the definition of non-moral standards.
Thank you, Teacher Ensenada. standards is defined at various ways. Here are the some definitions. Non-moral standards refers to rules that affect the choice of a person but are not linked to moral or ethical considerations. Either these standards are not necessarily linked to morality or by nature lack ethical sense. We can also define it as a matters of taste or preference. It manages individual life, aspirations, and desires, and may decide a person's place in his or her group. Some non-moral standards of any society could be the table manners, general etiquette, clothing, and others. In addition, we can conclude that it is a standards by which we judge what is good or bad, what is right or wrong in a non-moral way. So, thank you for listening. Here's Teacher Dongoya and Teacher De La Cruz to present the characteristic of non-moral standards.
Thank you, Teacher Depad, for the warm introduction. Now, probably many of us want to know the characteristics of non-moral standards. That's why Teacher De La Cruz and I are here to explain to you some of the characteristics of non-moral standards. So, non-moral standards include the characteristics such as number 1, welfare of non-beings. It doesn't affect one's life if violation of non-moral standards are made. It is for the good of non-human. Number 2, relies on authority, law, religion, and tradition. One characteristic of non-moral standards is that it relies on law, religion, and tradition. Like in our country, we use po and opo and place the hand of the elder on our forehead as a sign of respect. But not practicing this Filipino tradition will not violate the non-moral standards, and we don't have the right to force them to do so. Number 3, limits hegemony. To understand these characteristics, we must know the meaning of hegemony. According to Oxford Dictionary, this word means leadership or dominance, especially by one country or social group over others. In simple terms, one of the characteristics of non-moral standards is limited depending on the area of application. For example, basketball rules. The rules of basketball will only be applied on basketball and does not affect any other game. And this is not superior to other sports or other games. Number 4, focus on self-interest. For example, in fashion, the standards that fashion has depend on self-interest. Between what is beautiful and what is ugly or rubbish. It is simply said the characteristics of non-moral standard. This one characteristic of non-moral standard focus on self-interest. It involves us. Observing these characteristics will guide us to distinguish the difference between moral and non-moral standards. Some of the other information about the characteristics of non-moral standards will be explained to you by Teacher De La Cruz.
Hello and a blessed day everyone, I'm Alex De La Cruz. We're here to present our last presentation about definition of ethics. Definition of ethics in our daily life. And last but not the least is also the distinction between moral and non-moral standard. So what we are waiting for, let's start our discussion. Padayon everyone. Well said, Teacher Dongoya, but the characteristic of non-moral standard does not end in those. In addition, non-moral standard focus more on emotion and vocabulary, and it is goal-oriented. They are means to an end we wish to achieve. Non-moral include independence, popularity, and wealth. Stage. So for some basic example of non-moral standards, let's listen to Teacher Espihon, Teacher Dison, and Teacher Flores.
Basically, the basic examples of non-moral standards lands on the rules of etiquette, fashion standards, rules in games, and various house rules. Some of the examples are also about some religious rules, some traditions, and legal statutes. In example, laws and ordinances are non-moral principles, although they can be ethically relevant depending on some factors and context.
Hello and a pleasant day everyone. I'm Edwin and Ethan. We're here to present our task presentation about definition of ethics. The definition of ethics in our daily life, and also the last but not the least, is also the distinction between moral and non-moral standards. So what are we waiting for? Let's start the discussion. Batayon everyone. Teacher and teacher is right. And for further explanation, non-moral standards, including sample 1. Standard of equity, by which it just matters as a good or bad. It is a set of rules on how an individual show responsibility, behave in the society. People manners such as the proper use of routines and the proper matters of ethics example of it. 2. Standard we call the law by which we just recall right and wrong. 3. Standard of aesthetic by which we distinguish whether art is good or bad.
In addition, here are also some examples in non-moral standards. Number 4. The athletic standards. How well a game is being played. Following or violating some basketball rules may matter in basketball games but does not necessarily affect one's life or well-being. Number 5. Any violation does not pose a serious threat to human well-being, like wearing shorts to a formal party. So, co-teachers, let's now listen to Teacher Dipad and Teacher Gunda because they are going to tackle some scenarios of non-moral standards.
Thank you, Teacher Flores. So, co-teachers, let's remember that when thinking about a moral claim versus a non-moral claim, it is important to recognize that the word non-moral is not the same as immoral. Immoral can be defined as something that does not confront to standards of morality, while non-moral can be defined as something that does not possess characteristic of or fall into the realm of morals and ethics. And for the examples, let's listen to Teacher Gunda.
Thank you, Teacher Dipad, and a pleasant evening to everyone. So here are the examples. You are offered to work to attend Halloween job, but that would be leaving your family to a very close. What are the values here? First, the success / future achievement / excitement versus family, love, and faith. Number 2, you are friends with Shane, who is dating Tyler. Shane told you that she's been seeing John on the side but begs you not to tell Tyler. Tyler then asks you if Shane has ever cheated on him. What are the values here? Friendship, loyalty versus truth. So for the third example, you are an official manager for Jean. You find out that Jean has been leaving work early and asking his co-workers to clock him out on time. You intend to fire Jean, but then you find out that he's been leaving early because he needs to pick up his child from a daycare. What are the values here? Justice versus mercy. You could probably make a compelling argument for either side for each of the above, but that makes an ethical dilemma so difficult or interesting if you're not directly involved.